Another feature that harkens back to the stellar cult specifically is the idea that the interior of churches have the dome. The celestial dome, or the domos, representing the night sky and the heavens. But again, the idea that not just in city centers, but different parts of the famous cities, we always have the clock tower. Now this clock dial is usually so far up in the sky that you can't even see it to tell what time it is, so it's an architectural motif alone. And that is to represent the same idea we've been talking about. And that's why the spires are like this. They're shaped like that, because it's transmitting celestial energy down to the terrestrial. Because the ancient creators of cities understood this, that there's a symbiosis between the heavenly and the earth. Just as in a human being's life, his fate is connected to some zodiac out there, so the whole of the fate of mankind, the fate of those who live on earth in the communities of the world also is written in the heavens. We see these architectural masterpieces, and we know subconsciously, we're attracted to it, we know it's beautiful, but we have consciously forgot why. And as I said, this is again to be understood as not something of remote history. This is something of the modern age today. David Oveson, an American writer, in his book The Secret Architecture of Our Nation's Capital, has discovered that in Washington, D.C., for instance, there are 23 complete zodiacs in Washington, in the architecture, secreted into the architecture there. And there's over 1,000 other zodiacal and planetary symbols. And there's 4 zodiacs in London. London is also divided into 28 boroughs, representing the lunations of the moon. There's not a single building in England of any importance that's not built over some Celtic site of the previous stellar and lunar cult. Those who've studied this subject know that. But Oveson and other researchers are now discovering that the secret societies like the Freemasons, for whatever purposes, have designed the cities meticulously to not only align with certain constellations, but to commemorate certain stars like the star Sirius, and Draco, and Alpha Draconis, and the Pole Star, and the Bear, Ursa Major, so on. However, we've got to realize that there was mistakes were also made in this transposition. Cyril Fagan, in his book Astrological Origins, says that in their desire to appear highly intellectual, scientific, and mathematical, the Greeks, probably about the time of Alexander the Great, adopted the solar nomenclature, thereby turning ancient zodiacal symbolism topsy-turvy and making it sheer nonsense. This must be borne in mind very deeply, that when we're even researching and studying this subject, and when we come upon things that don't quite make sense, this can help you to realize that, yes, you're studying this here, but we have the Greeks and the Romans and the medieval period, we've got the Christians, and all of these individuals take the ancient gnosis, but they twist it and contort it and subvert it. And therefore it's a process. This is what this program is dedicated to, is trying to help you in this decoding process, so that you may get back to the original theology. Theology is very important for our lives. Mythology is very important for our lives. Spirituality is, but not the one that's been handed down to us, sanitized and homogenized and corrupted and subverted. This package that we just buy and install. There's a much more ancient one. And we need to get back to that as we come full circle in today's world. I've already made mention in the early part of this program about the fact that the Bible still does contain many enigmatic phrases and passages that allude to what we were talking about in terms of the ancient cults. Now, in John 14, we also read one of these most enigmatic passages. It says, "In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also." Now, Jordan Maxwell has pointed out in his work that this term, like many passages in the Bible, have just blatantly misinterpreted. I mean, obviously we should realize that it's impossible to have many mansions in a house. But you could have many rooms in a house. You could have many compartments of a house. You could have many houses in the sky, like in the zodiac. Could the mansion be the heavens, the dome of the heavens, the great theater of the mysteries? And within that theater, that great mansion, There could be many houses. Well, that's, in our belief, what that passage actually refers to. It refers to the zodiac and the houses there. It refers to the girdle of Isis, the girdle of the goddess Nuth. We understand that the 12 tribes of Israel, there's the number 12, is another allusion to the zodiac. And the Hebrews had a wall, great and high, and had 12 gates. And at the gates 12 angels, and names were written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. And anyone who knows anything about Hebrew astrology or the tribes of Israel know that all the symbols of the tribes of Israel were the astrological signs. Rabbis admit this. There's books on Hebrew astrology showing you that you not only have 12 tribes, but the symbols of each of the tribes of Israel are astrological symbols. And they were great worshippers of certain feast days throughout the year. Now, well, when it comes to the number 12, we're in a whole incredible subject there. We got not only the 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 hours, the 12 months. At Catholic confirmation is at age 12, the ceremony to represent full circle of the zodiac. You have a confirmation ceremony. We've got jury members with the judge, the magistrate being the 13th member, representing the occult 13th sign of the zodiac. We've got the 12 patriarchs of Israel, the 12 brothers of Joseph, the 12 stages of the underworld process in Egypt. We've got 12 stages of the mummification process, a very rigorous idea there in mummification that you should have 12 stages. Egypt itself was divided into 12 provinces, one for each of the signs of the zodiac. In the primal conflict between Set and Osiris, when Osiris is finally killed, we find that he's cut up into 12 pieces, the body of the hero. 12 stones is what Moses erects for the tribes. Arthur had 12 knights. Balder in Scandinavian mythology had 12 judges. Odysseus had 12 companions. Romulus, 12 shepherds. Roland in French, a troubadour tradition, had 12 peers. Jacob had 12 sons. Hrolf in the Danish myths had 12 berserkers. There's 12 Aesir, that's the god of the high Teutons. In the octave we have 12 notes. And in the brain we have 12 cranial nerves. We'll come back to that later on. But Jesus and his 12 helpers is the most common one to people, the apostles. But again, we have a message here. If you actually look at the symbolic way that this was communicated to us by the artists, like Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci, and the other medieval and Mannerist painters, we'll notice something very interesting. In Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper, for instance, we understand that we have Jesus at the Last Supper, and we understand that Jesus is the Son. But if you actually examine this remarkable painting closely, you'll find something enigmatic. The 12 are not just loosely grouped around the Son, around Jesus Christ. There's a pattern to them. They're in groups of 3. And those groups of 3 represent the seasons. They represent the zodiological signs. But the zodiological signs are, of course, aligned with the months. So the group on the far left, and each group is only speaking to itself. They're all communicating only to themselves. So let's say that summer, autumn, winter, and spring, autumn, summer, winter, whatever way you want to look at it, that's what we're seeing as the real theme in this fine painting. The 12, but the actual divisions of the seasons. Because we understand that in the center is the Christ, the enlightened one, the Son, who will come again. That means he'll go round and round and round, right? Only to come again every day in the diurnal cycle and also in the zodiacal cycle of the year. When you see the great temples and cathedrals, churches of the world, you'll always notice the 12 panes of the rose windows. Again, a commemoration to the stellar cult. The idea of the round table of ancient times. They sat at a round table to emphasize that the real round table was up above your head. It was literally the zodiac. And we turn to the Celtic calendar, we find the heart of the stellar and lunar paradigm. Not only do you find the 12 or occasionally 13 signs, but we also find that these signs were related to Earth. Each of the signs of the zodiac were not so much given an animal motif as they are today, they were assigned to the 12 trees. So the idea of the tree of life being a very important motif and also connecting to the earth. The worship of the trees was an original zodiac. When we study the Celtic seasonal cycle, we find the great feast days, which were later transfigured or transposed into some of the modern holidays. If you've read any of the fine books on this subject or researched this subject, Robert Graves and Caitlin Matthews, lots of books out there on the subject, you'll start to understand a couple of things, and that is that the calendar was changed, it was altered from a stellar to a solar-centric one. That we have different stories going on. The calendar year's opening date was artificially also changed. That the saints' days were merely superimposed upon more ancient sidereal festivals. And the most important one is that there was a supplantation of the feminine principle. There was the masculinization of the deities and the iconic symbols. That last one there is an entire subject in itself that I deal with more elaborately in the other program in the series called Divination and the Goddess Tradition. This whole idea of the masculinization and slow subversion of the feminine principle, which in turn has horrific ramifications for human consciousness and for gender relations and so on. Now, David Duncan, in his book The Calendar, says that from the beginning, the Roman calendar was a powerful political tool that governed religious holidays, festivals, market days, and constantly changing schedules of days when it was legal to conduct judicial and official business in the courts and governments. The inaccurate calendar played havoc not only with the farmers and sailors, but also with the population, becoming more dependent than ever on trade, commerce, law, and civil administration in a rapidly growing empire that desperately needed a standard system of measuring time. So what David Duncan is telling us is that we were not just given a set of time, a calendar, which is of course needed. We were given this hybrid, this concoction that was so off the wall that the ancient people found it very confusing. Scholars like Joseph Campbell have always mentioned anyway that the very language of the Bible is a mercantile language. He brought that out. Many have noticed this. Because yes, there was a paradigm shift when the Saturnian and the solar cult are becoming dominant. It's less and less and less to do about your empowerment and religion and true worship of God. No, it's got more to do with subjugation. Of course the calendar had to be changed, because we're not meant to be worshiping nature. We're not meant to be worshiping and believing in the real. We're meant to be dumbed down and in total servitude. And one of the best ways to do that was to subvert time and to subvert the calendar. But evidences of this stellar cult are to be found on all the flags of the world. Children always remark, why are these stars on these flags? Even from childhood you notice that. Yes, well, why indeed? Why would the flags of nations have this motif so prevalent all over the world, the stars? Even the European Union's flag has 12 stars representing the zodiac. We've got rising suns, we've got crescent moons, we've got stars. Well, the reason is what we're telling you here, that the whole idea is that when you realize that all the modern establishments and institutes and paradigms come out of the stellar and solar and lunar cult, now we can understand why we see these motifs. The California flag of America. Everyone thinks it shows the grizzly bear and the red star, and yet it does not. This is yet another cryptic device. What it refers to is the bear, yes, but it's the bear up there. The red star is the pole star around which moves Ursa Major, the bear. What you're actually seeing on the California flag is nothing less than an astro-theological motif disguised to look like something else. Now the Egyptians, unlike us today, did not open their year at December 21st or January 1st, or even where astrologers are wont to think of the beginning of the zodiac, which is Aries. No, their year opened in the sign of Virgo, which in those days, because of precessional movement of the heavens, was around July 20th, 25th. This is when the Nile started to rise and the flood waters began to rise. That was around about the period when Sirius, the star, was high in the sky, around the July 20th and 25th, the season. And that was the sun would rise into the constellation or sign of Virgo. And of Virgo is, of course, the sign of the Virgin, which has always been depicted for ancient times as the female goddess or the female queen, the beautiful virgin, Virgo, Well, of course, naturally, if the year for the Egyptians opened in Virgo, then like ours, we have 12 seasons, 12 months to go through until the year closes. And the year will close, logically, in the sign before Virgo. And the sign before Virgo, just pick up a coffee table book on astrology, or log onto the internet and look up, and you'll see that the sign that comes before Virgo is Leo the lion. Leo the lion was then the closing of the year. So that is why you have a sphinx, because it is the head of the virgin and the tail of a lion, meaning in one symbol. This is the way the ancients did things, so beautifully, so figuratively. The idea is that the head of the female looks out to the horizon, her gaze follows the whole earth, which is circular, and comes back to the body of the lion. It is simply a symbol of the zodiac. It's a symbol of the zodiac in sandstone, standing 66 feet high. And all it is to tell you is that we were astrologers. We were the Magi. So the first sign of the zodiac, Virgo, the sign of the Virgin. The last sign of the zodiac, Leo. Put them together and you've got the Sphinx. Virgo was the female, the virgin, holding the sheaf of wheat. Now the sun entered the sign of Virgo around July 25th. Upon entering this female sign, the ancient cosmologists said that the sun, that's the Son of God, the heavens, was born again, born of a virgin. That's where that term comes from. The Christian idea of being born of a virgin, one of the meanings of it, there are many. But in the stellar cult, it was the idea that the Son of God was now being born in the sign of the Virgin, or of a virgin. When the Sphinx was constructed, its visage even faced that part of the horizon where the constellations of Leo and Virgo rose at nightfall. So this face, the eyes were looking to the horizon, but at night, Virgo and Leo would rise right in front of the eyes of the Sphinx. Now because the beginning of this zodiacal belt was in Virgo, the zodiac was called the girdle of Isis, the virgin goddess. She was the prototype of Mary. The son of Isis was Horus. Mary's son was Jesus. Horus was the basis of the Christ myth. His name meant light or sun, and that's where we get the word horizon, or the zone of Horus. And we also get hours from his name. And that's right. Horus's zone, that's the zone of the sun, when the sun rises on the horizon, it's the zone of Horus, the sun god. The horizon. The old word for prayers in the Shakespearean era was orisons. And we all know that we turn to the east. Cultures still do this. You turn to the east to say your prayers, your orisons. Why do you turn to the east? Because the sun is going to rise there. You worship the sun. It's a solar cult. And Horus, you just have to turn two of the letters around and you get hours, H-O-U-R-S. Because they used to say, to take the time, where is Horus now? Where is the golden falcon now? Meaning, what hour of the day is it? What Horus of the day is it? We even tell our children to be as good as gold, meaning be as good as the golden one, Horus. You are a youngster. A child is known as a young star. Like Horus was the youngster of Isis and Osiris. So just remember, when you hear that term, born of a virgin, think astrology. But again, we're being told this. You only have to look at the symbolism. Once you've opened your right brain, you're using your whole mind, you've learned some pattern recognition, you'll find that nothing's being concealed from you. Mother Mary with the sun above her head and the crescent moon under her feet. We have it in the corporate logos of today, Columbia Pictures. The Virgin with the sun gleaming behind her back, or holding the great torch. Literally, the sun in Virgo. What you're seeing in that logo is nothing more than an astrological motif. And if you've seen the subversive use of sacred symbolism, we go into this very much and show how so many corporate logos date from this, or come from this idea of the movement of the sun through the constellations. The original Madonna, born of a virgin. The solar cult get hold of this, and they move things around. Horus suddenly becomes more aligned with the sun, yes, but more aligned with, say, Aries. Jesus holding the Lamb of God. Everyone knows the Lamb or the Ram is the sign of Aries. So they move the Son of God away from Virgo and move it to a new place, a new identification. And that can be okay to do in some respects, but it's what the mythographers do every age. They change the symbolism. Once upon a time, the bull was worshipped, and the cow goddess. That represents Taurus, the bull. Later on, the ram Egypt's filled with the ram symbols because that's Aries. As the sun moves, the mythologies change. So the pyramid and the Sphinx and many of the other tombs and temples, structures, are patently astronomical and astrological. And even when you render or see the Sphinx rendered, you'll notice that it also has wings, or it might have claws, or it might have scales. It has the head of a woman, it has the tail of a dragon or a lion. Again, that just represents the four corners, the four coming together, the wings and the claws and the body of a lion, the cardinal points of the zodiac. Now, to make astronomy and astrology possible, that is to have a science or an art of astrology or astronomy, there are three basic celestial cycles or movements that must be taken into account. The first is the rotation of the Earth around the Sun. Okay, so that's a rotation we're talking about. There's three different kinds of rotation that make the science of astrology possible. There's the movement of the Earth around the Sun. Then we have the rotation of the Earth on its own axis. Okay, that's another movement of circular movement. On its own axis, the Earth will revolve. Then we have the slow wobble of the axis of the Earth as it turns. So we've got the movement of the Earth as it turns, but it doesn't just turn perfectly foliiform, perfectly straight. It wobbles. And you'll notice this if you have a spinning top or a gyroscope. You'll notice that it has a wobble effect on the axis. Now, these three celestial motions were known in the ancient world and are absolutely central. And they were commemorated in many logos and symbols, especially those you see on churches and ancient motifs. Now, due to the wobble of the axis of the Earth, the sun, moon, planets, and constellations appear to move backwards through the 12 signs. The sun takes 2,160 years to traverse one sign of 30 degrees, moving 1 degree every 72 years. The entire cycle lasts 25,920 years. This round is known by astrologers and astronomers as the precession of the equinoxes. So this is getting a little deeper into the subject of astrology. There are 12 signs of the zodiac, and the sun moves backwards through them. Of course, when it moves backwards, we see from our Earth as if the constellations are moving the other direction, okay? So it's just a matter of parallax view and perspective. But the sun, every day, in fact, every morning that you go out and the sun rises, same thing every year. Every year at the vernal equinox, when the sun rises in the spring, the ancients realized that it's moving slightly eastward every time, just a few degrees or minutes of arc. It does not rise every morning or every year in the same place on the horizon.